fire release, wind release, and lightning release. What if Naruto had employed a training regimen that consisted of these three chakra natures throughout his training period with Jiraiya, and by doing so, creating a Keke Tota, being a line of jutsu combining these three nature releases, somewhat mimicking that of the Tsuchikage's particle style, and possibly making him just as famous. So, without further ado, what if Naruto had Blaze release? Not to be confused with the Uchiha's Black Flame, nor Scorch. So, with that out of the way, roll that intro. As the group would approach the hidden leaf and could see it upon their horizon, what they would be met with is an unruly sight, as a massive condensed explosion of air that would send tremors even miles out to where they currently are would be followed with stones that seemed to be portions of homes and buildings from the very village itself. As they gain a vantage point by jumping up, they would see that an entire portion, if not 90% of the village had in fact been leveled and turned into a crater, almost as of something clicking in their head. Both of them would simultaneously say variations of the phrase body flicker, as they would disappear from in front of their friends. Everyone, of course, knows what is happening. Not necessarily that it is pain, but that the leaf must be under attack. Naruto and Sasuke obviously attempted to get as close as possible to help defend their village, while the rest of Team Taka would slowly crouch in on the battle, as they might have a vantage point, not just rushing in like the other two. Plus, no one on this team is really at their level, so them interfering head-on in a battle with these two is practically meaningless. So they would rather play reconnaissance for now and maybe attack any hidden enemy. On the other hand, Naruto and Sasuke would eventually make their way to the leaf. As they do arrive, they would hear the voice of Sakura. She would be screaming out Naruto's name as the fog would clear up where their body flicker had ended. As they would turn to the source of the sound, they would see their teammate Sakura practically being separated from a giant slug. Naruto is aware that this is Katsuyu, but Sasuke not. He would look back in front of him as he would urge Naruto to do the same. The person who is standing in front of them is from the Akatsuki, meaning he's either as strong, if not stronger, than the man that they had met earlier. And if Naruto could remember, they couldn't even land a hit on him. Naruto would at first laugh as he would pull up his sleeves, saying this bastard had messed with our village, meaning we don't get to lose. Are you ready for this, Sasuke? As Naruto would take out a headband from his kunai pouch, handing it to Sasuke. It is at first clear that this is Sasuke's old headband, as it had a slit over the Leaf Village symbol. And as civilian and shinobi alike would start freeing themselves from underneath rubble, as they're being freed from similar beasts to what Sakura was, they would realize that there were still many people present in the village, and that many people they could have cared about might have died or perished in this fight. And as they would look around, they would see a few faces, but with them looking around, so were the faces that were freed. This is where people would start realizing that both Naruto and Sasuke are present. Obviously, Sakura being informed by Hyuga and Tsunade racing straight towards the battlefield. She had been incapacitated at first and her body is heavily worn down. She would also appear as if she was a few decades older. As she would approach, she would land between Naruto and Sasuke, being glad that Naruto was able to return his friend. She would see Naruto holding out the headband, and as Sasuke would pick it up, she would say that Sasuke Uchiha is now reinstated as a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf. He would tie the headband around his head as he would give the area one final scan. He would look over at Naruto and nod, showing that he is ready. The two would leap at their opponent, but as they get closer, they would hear one phrase that would practically ring through their ears as they go flying. Shinra Tensei, or Almighty Push. As they go flying, they would immediately realize what's going on. This person probably has some form of Kekkei, and it probably has to do with those eyes. They need to be careful. This is probably only the surface of his powers, and both of them did get pretty injured from that, as it did semi-bruise their ribs and whatever got directly hit. They would, however, find their footing again, and as they do, they would see 5 other individuals with the same hair color, eyes, and cloaks appear around the one that they had just attacked. And even though at first these individuals had appeared to be from the same clan or something, they really did not want to make any assumptions, so they would leap further back, getting back close to Tsunade. As they jumped next to the Hokage, she would summon 2 small snails, which would then sit on Naruto and Sasuke's shoulders. She would explain that they could communicate using these without needing to yell out loud, and anyone with one will also be able to communicate. This, though, would not be a direct voice line, as she would go on to explain communication through Kotsuyu. But nevertheless, the two would nod as they would jump back into action, with Sasuke jumping forward and Naruto jumping back. This is where we would hear Naruto asking Sasuke to keep them at bay for a while. He needs to try something. Sasuke would jump forward as his eye would start to bleed, and he would scream, "Amaterasu!" as one of the pains, or one of the individuals, would erupt into black flame. And even though the rest were trying to put it out at first, it did not work, until another pain approached and merely absorbed the flames. Sasuke is dumbfounded as he knows these black flames cannot be extinguished, meaning that individual had to either get rid of the very chakra itself or absorb it into themselves. Whilst on the other hand, Naruto had jumped back to attempt to go into Sage mode. He would stand there in meditation as there would appear these orange shapes around his eyes. And after some minutes of Sasuke figuring out their opponents and him relaying every bit of information he could get to Naruto, they would determine that all these pains share vision, as he was able to attack some of them from their blind spots using body flicker, yet others would practically notify them without a word. This is where they would come to the conclusion that these pains are connected, for Naruto to only assume Sage mode and confirm Sasuke's theory, saying that there is string tethering them to some unknown source, meaning that these are merely puppets and that they're only facing a diversion for right now. And as Naruto would jump back into battle, one of the pains, the one that they had attacked primarily, would start speaking. "Good, Naruto. This means I won't have to hunt you down," as they would once again hear something that would ring through their ears. He would put up both their arms and they would brace for a force, but instead of them being pushed away, they would hear Bonsho Tenin, or Almighty Pull, as they would come flying towards the pain, with 2 other individuals jumping in between them. One of them would have their arm morph into what seems to be a blaster, or some sort of arm cannon, whilst the other one merely pulled out a black rod. And as they come closer, they would nearly be impaled. Naruto would somehow be able to avoid the rod and have it merely go into his leg, while Sasuke is able to conjure up this weird purple aura that would block the blast. But nevertheless, they're still both pretty injured, with Sasuke practically taking some area of effect damage from the resulting blast, and Naruto still having a giant pen through his leg. But this would not stop the duo, as they would find their footing, starting to dust themselves off, almost as if they hadn't just gotten thrown or injured, with both of them simultaneously saying that they had figured it out. They would then take somewhat of a cocky stance as Naruto would be first to speak. He'd say that all of them are merely puppets, and that's how they're predicting each other's attacks. All of them are able to see them, and as they relay information to the puppet master, he could just merely control the ones that aren't able to see them, and that's how they aren't able to attack blind spots. Then it would alternate to Sasuke, who would say that each of them have a different ability. The one in the middle who they had been attempting to attack has the abilities to repel and attract things, and that's how he was able to destroy the village. On the other hand, the one that had just attacked him has the ability to change his body into weapons. While the third one that he was able to observe, the one that had absorbed his Amaterasu, has the ability to absorb chakra. And as they come to a close on their statements, they would once again charge, this time successfully landing their attacks. Naruto by not properly landing his attack, but actually attempting to avoid hitting his opponent, while some weird spectral energy would be the thing to hit. While on the other hand, Sasuke would merely engage his opponent in Tai and Kenjutsu, this being the opponent who has the ability to absorb chakra, practically giving them the upper edge, since even though all the Pain's visions are connected, they're still being operated by one person, so if he has to pay attention to multiple opponents, it will never be perfect. This is when all Pains would take their positions, with one of them leaping into the shadows as if to be avoided, and another doing the hand seals for a summoning jutsu. And out from said summoning comes many different creatures. At first only a chameleon, then a dog, and a rhino. And from simple observation, it is easily told that these are no normal animals, and soon it will be revealed what's special about them. But as this happens, the weapon path, or the one with the ability to conjure weapons from his body, would take this moment to attack Tsunade. But Naruto's reflexes would be on point. He would near immediately vanish, appearing above the Pain as he would slam down a Rasengan, destroying this one, or at least seemingly destroying it once and for all. He would then turn to the Pains as Sasuke would leap back to him. Both of them would then start going through hand signs as they would slam their hands on the ground, summoning some of their respective beasts, with Naruto summoning 4 animals being Gamabunta, Gamaken, Gamahiro, and Gamakichi, the son of Gamabunta. He would ask the smaller toad to take Tsunade to a safe place and the rest of them to attack the summons. On the other hand, Sasuke would summon an unfamiliar blue snake, which for now would remain unnamed. And unlike Naruto, he would actually stay mounted, deciding to actually help the toads along with his snake to defeat the summons and the path that controls them. Naruto, on the other hand, would make his way to the ground, and he would decide to fight off against individual Pains, as they had already destroyed one and found a way to offset the others. They would look at each other in something that seems to be understanding, as both of them would leap into battle, with Naruto preparing a Rasen Shuriken off the bat. Obviously, it brimming with fire, lightning, and wind, as the very ground below him is slowly turning into molten rock. He would then launch it at the Pains as the viewers would start realizing what is happening. More specifically, Tsunade and Sakura. They would both be aware that this is the Rasen Shuriken, something they're all too familiar with because of the lasting effects it had on Naruto the last time he used it. But this time it's different. As soon as it left Naruto's hands, it almost disappeared because of the lightning benefits to the nature. And as soon as it touched the Pains, even though they had attempted to jump out of the way, they couldn't move. And they would be shredded or set ablaze by this jutsu, with 2 of them immediately going down. Obviously only now leaving the path with the ability to absorb chakra and the Pareda path, or the one with the almighty pull and push for Naruto to face off against, and Sasuke to take care of the rest of the summons, and obviously the animal path, or the one with the summoning capabilities. Switching to Sasuke to not make this too short of a fight, he would quickly come to realize that these animals have special properties. Like for example, the chameleon who can go invisible, being primarily taken care of by him and his new snake. They would be able to locate the chameleon only thanks to Sasuke's dojutsu, and the snake would merely follow orders. On the other hand, we see Gamabunta and the rest of the toads facing off against the rhino and the dog who had seemingly multiplied after being killed. This would be very curious, but Sasuke would come to a conclusion. After disabling the chameleon, he would decide to go after the animal path, as he believes if he gets rid of the path, then the animals would no longer be a problem, as he's merely assuming that the dogs are multiplying via multiple summoning, which would be proven wrong within short time, as he would proceed to destroy the animal path. But this leaves something curious. What had happened to the path that had jumped into the woods earlier? It had actually been caught in Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, and even though it didn't immediately get destroyed, we would see Team Taka arriving in the shadows, completing the job that Naruto's Rasen Shuriken had failed to do. On the other hand, Naruto would continue his fight with the two remaining pains, with this going similar to the end fight in Shippuden. This time Naruto had been pretty exhausted, having fought against Tobi, or whom he believed to be Madara at the time, earlier said same day, and having exhausted a bunch of chakra to get here in the first place. Even though he is stronger in general, he hasn't had as much training in Sage Mode, and it would eventually go away, as he doesn't have clones to generate it for him this time, meaning that his fight would go pretty similar, and that Team Taka would have to interfere eventually, leading to Naruto having an outbreak with the Nine Tails, as Team Taka would now be caught in the crossfire, and even though they would get substantially injured, Sasuke would be able to get them out. But nevertheless, they're never actually able to get close enough to the Pareda path. Naruto was able to take out one last path, being the one with the ability to absorb chakra via generating nature energy while being under his hold, meaning that Naruto is down. He's pinned to the ground currently, with Hinata finally jumping in to help him, meaning that that fight would go fairly similar. But on the other hand, the Toads had actually been pretty tired at this point, and pretty injured as well, with Gamma Ken and Gamma Hero even being dispelled at this point. Sasuke's snake would have followed a similar fate, I guess you could say, after he had lost attention to him, revealing that yet another chameleon had been present. But thanks to Sasuke working with Gamabunta, they were able to dispatch the last chameleon and even continue fighting off against the remaining dogs, which had been quite a sum, forcing Jugo to even step in and help the party, while Soigetsu and Rin are forced to watch the gruesomeness done to both Hinata and Naruto. And after she got hit and they decided to finally step in, as they cannot continue watching such travesties, Naruto would break out into his Nine Tails form, leading to a similar path as in canon for Naruto. On the other hand, when Sasuke would finally defeat his opponents, he would be waiting for Naruto to come back to his senses, even attempting to use his newfound Mangekyo Sharingan to calm Naruto down, which obviously would not happen until Minato would tighten the seal on Naruto, and him having finally once again interacted with the Nine Tails. As he would drop down to the ground, he would be quickly healed by Karin and awakened by Sasuke. This would leave a weakened Tsunade and Sakura to rush to the battlefield to also attempt to help. Naruto would jump up, being back in consciousness, as he would ask what had happened to the path. Sasuke would explain the story, as Naruto would have an idea. He would walk up to one of the True Seeker rods and pull it out of the ground, and he would once again enter Sage Mode. As he does, this would lead him to the hideout where Nagato had obviously been hiding. This would lead him and Sasuke, along with Sakura and the rest of Team Taka, to head towards Nagato's location. But actually, thanks to Sasuke, both Sakura and Karin would be encouraged to instead help the villagers. Even though at first they were reluctant, they would eventually agree, leaving Naruto, Soigetsu, Jugo, and obviously Sasuke to head to the boss of the Pains, preparing for a larger fight. But when they arrived, they would see something they weren't prepared for. a bruised, battered, and broken Nagato, someone who was on their deathbed. And thanks to Naruto's classic Taka no Jutsu, he's able to convince his mortal enemy to bring back his village by explaining not only his backstory, but how he was able to redeem Sasuke. And if Sasuke could be redeemed after being violated, experimented on, and even played with by Orochimaru, then why couldn't Nagato redeem himself? Finally pushing the redhead to come back to the side of the light and doing the last good deed that he could, returning Konoha's people back to life. This would obviously at first result in Sasuke wanting to destroy Nagato's corpse, but Naruto would be able to convince his friend to let Konan take him back to the rain, where he would be buried and praised by his people, because even though he did do some tyrannous shit here in the Leaf, back home he was seen as a hero, someone who protected the people. So he would let Konan go. But with that out of the way, guys, this is going to be the end to this part of What If Naruto Had Blaze Release. Just like how I had promised in the last part, this part had been a lot longer, reaching all the way up to 20 minutes, as you could see. So if you enjoyed this part, make sure to smash like and subscribe. And I am actually sorry to those who were expecting a long dialogue with Nagato with Sasuke's presence, but I personally feel I didn't need to go over much after Naruto's encounter, or at least takedown by the pain. Sure, some people might think that it was purely convenient that Naruto lost in that situation and that it felt kind of rushed. But in all honesty, I do see Naruto being really tired, and without the help of shadow clones having Sage Mode, I don't really see him being able to hold up as long. So I see something similar still happening. And with Naruto's classic Taka no Jutsu, I don't really see anyone interfering in the pain situation, and him going near exactly to canon, with Team Taka and Sasuke obviously not wanting to say anything, as it might interrupt Naruto's big mojo, I guess. So, if you guys understand that, maybe consider joining my Discord, where you could give me suggestions to how I can improve these stories further than I already have. So, without further ado, this has been your boy Six. Peace.